Hello and welcome to the Run As Well podcast with me, Rick Pearson.
And me, Ben Hobson.
Today we're talking about running and stress.
Today we're just talking about whatever we want, Rick, because for the first time in the history of this podcast, we've had two guests who are booked in to record for whatever reason, not be around to record. So
yeah, we've had some late, quite stress-filled cancellations, haven't we? So it's an appropriate topic for us to delve into.
yeah, stress, because one of the great factors in running and stress is outside influence. So let's talk about that. But yeah, so no guest of the week this week, which, you know, some people may like or may not, but here we are. We are here. We've got something to talk about, and it's going to be great. So strap yourselves in.
Hey, look, before we get into the stress thing though, there's
Yes.
we've got an event, haven't we? Which will be coming out. We're doing the day after this comes out. So it's the Capital Ring Relay. We haven't done an event in a couple of years, have we? So we've got the whole editorial team together, 7 of us. We're taking on the I think it's 78 miles, isn't it? In 12 hours. That's the plan.
Hey, look, you're the architect of this running building or whatever. So yeah, it's another one of Rick's things. If no one was aware, we've done 2 previous ones. One was we did a relay where we ran to the highest point in every London borough, which was a very fun day out.
That was good, wasn't it?
That was a proper 24-hour event though, wasn't it? And then the other one was the London Loop, which is a bit further, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's called the M25 for walkers, but it's a much nicer route than that description implies.
Yeah.
It's 150 miles. And we gloriously managed to just not quite do it, didn't we? We did it in about 24 hours and 15 minutes. I think really as a result of the amount of selfies that were taken en route. So we've got to try and learn from that. We've got to be able to do this in 12 hours because the actual overall time set by an individual, Richard McDowell, who's a very, very good runner, is something like 10 hours, 15 minutes. So it's kind of like we've got to be able to do it in 12. There's 7 of us. Come on.
Yeah, you say that.
I know.
There's going to be plenty of selfies. So yeah, this is the next one in the back catalogue of Rick challenges. So we've got that. It's Tuesday the 21st of February today. Wednesday the 22nd of February, tomorrow, we will be doing it. So we're all running about 12 miles each, I think, and that's about it. And we've just got to get it done, Rick. It feels a bit racy, actually. I've got a sort of slight feeling of, you know, it's not just a little amble. It's quite a nice. It's got a bit of pressure.
Yeah, and I mean, any listeners like listen to this, I really do think that the relay with your mates, and obviously you can do different distances, and you can split it up. Like, say, we're going to do a couple of legs each and then pass on, but you could do a leg, and then take a rest and then do another leg. They're actually a great day out, and if you can get a nice route, most cities and towns are going to have the equivalent of a Capital Ring, which is what we're doing. You know, a kind of like green circumference that you could do.
So there are 16 stages in this, like, sections, shall we say, 16 sections of the Capital Ring. So you could get 16 mates, or
totally.
15 mates, include yourself, and
just
go off and just watching. Organisers' rights, and you have a good day out. But yeah, we're all doing a couple of sections each, so it all works out nicely that way. But yeah. I mean, we've had guests on before talking about adventures closer to home and how you can do all these things, and we've spoken about it at length. But yeah, it's nice to sort of practice what you preach and go off and do that. So make sure you just keep an eye on our Instagram at Runners World UK, because we're going to be posting up stories as the day develops and, you know, all those sorts of things. It looks like it might rain, Rick, so that's always nice.
Oh, that's nice. That was always the we always were like, when should we do it? Should we do it in May or June when there's nicer weather? And then we're like, no, we need to do it while there's some momentum around, and also when there's not a million other events happening as well. But
yeah, well,
this is the kind of downside of that, isn't it? You know, it could rain.
We are all slowly but surely adding races to the diary and stuff as the year progresses. So this seems to be the spot where no one's unwilling to do it because it might interrupt their training schedule.
Yeah. And what are you going to be wearing on your feet, Ben? Because it is sort of kind of mixed terrain, the Capital Ring, so it's an interesting decision.
Well, this is it. I'm the last bit, so I'm going from Stoke Newington down to Woolwich, and that's a mix of like canal pathways, which are actually all right. At their best, I'd describe them as gravel. I mean, at their worst, I describe them as gravel, and at the rest of the time, it's all paved.
Okay.
And then the rest of it's just like the greenway and dead straight and tarmac and stuff. So might even throw on a pair of super shoes, Rick.
Oh my god. Oh, well, let's deduct that from the time then. 4% addition to your time.
I've got the last leg. So if people have been faffing in the daytime,
yeah,
cruising around, taking it casually, and we're not close to 12. I might have to put on the super shoes, crank it up a little bit, but I doubt that's going to be a problem at all for anyone.
I think I've been lucky enough to try out these Innovate Trailfly 270 V2s. Aren't shoe names too long now, don't you think?
Well, it's because everything's like the Pegasus is 40 years old this year. That's the same age as me. So, I can't remember things. So everyone's run out of names. All these different codes that come with everything, all the different component parts that get named in all the names. It's just shoe names are very long these days.
Innovate Trailfly 270 V2. Anyway, I tried them out. The version 1 won the ultimate accolade that a trail shoe can win, which is, of course, Trail Shoe of the Year in Runner's World 2020.
No bigger prize.
But I like them. They're versatile sort of shoe, which I'm into. I'm into the idea of like, could you have one shoe for all your needs? And that is probably impossible. But this shoe wouldn't be that far away from it. You can do like road and you can do mud, and it's a zero drop. So harking back to my Born to Run origin story, but they're sort of sensible. They've got a decent amount of padding, so it's not like running in a pair of Hirachis and just eating cheer and living off the land.
Which is exactly how you have to live if you wear anything minimalist. Well, there you go. That's good review there. There is actually a full review from Rick about those shoes on the website.
There is actually, lots of good stuff on there. runnersworld.com/UK. Hey, look, we got a letter, Ben, as well which is always nice when we get people writing in. So please, if you do fancy writing in, it's just letters@runnersworld.co.uk, or you can just go.
Or just do podcast@runnersworld.co.uk.
That's even better, actually.
That is.
So this is from Mel Sadie, and she said, I'm listening to your podcast this week. This is a couple of weeks ago when we talked about what is the hardest UK road marathon. And
okay.
I think it was was Lansdale, wasn't it? Lansdale was easily the hardest. It had 15% DNF. But she said she wanted to throw Tenby Marathon in. It's very difficult. It's hilly. Did it back in 2017. So I'm not sure if my memories are distorted, as I enjoy a lot more hilly running nowadays. It's a scenic route too, and I'm not sure how high the DNF rate is. But that is one to throw in there. Tenby. That is hilly actually, because it's that part of Wales is kind of like coastal, isn't it? And pretty up and down.
And anything coastal, the elements really kick in, don't they?
Yeah.
There we go. Tenby's in the mix. I quite like this. We've taken whatever, it was New Balance, wasn't it, who did the survey?
Yeah.
So we've taken what New Balance have done, and maybe we're just going to get some user feedback and build upon this information, and maybe end up with a very conclusive list of these races. But so if anyone else has got was it marathons? It was just marathons. Or was it just road races?
It was road marathons. So presumably there were loads of hard trail marathons, but these road marathons don't tend to be as hilly. Basically. Yeah.
Hey, just keep letting us know. podcast@runnersworld.co.uk. Just let us know those hard road marathons. Not just like this was my first marathon and I found it hard. That doesn't count.
It doesn't count. No.
This has to be some sort of arduous, above and beyond.
Yeah.
Perilous, perhaps, road marathon. That's what we want to know about.
Hey, look, we did a funny piece on the website recently. I won't go too into it. Oh, it's so funny.
Funny.
It was the 12 best names in running, and this is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it was I believe the general sort of umbrella term for this is nominative determinism. So the theory that people gravitate towards fields of work that fit their name. So Amy Field might become a farmer, or
Got it.
Brian Graves is a funeral director. So
oh dear,
Brian. Some good ones here. So there's a hurdler called Marina Stepanova, which is
absolutely fantastic.
That's pretty good. She was a 1986 European champion. So that's a good one. obviously we've got famous ones like Usain Bolt. That's everyone knows that one, and obviously he's got a son called Thunderbolt, which is even better. So we'll have to watch his space on that one. But I think some of the best ones probably Trip Hurt, the steeplechaser.
Oh, that is very good. That is very good.
It's pretty good, isn't it? And then we had this is cool. This one there's Vanya Stambolova, and she did in fact stumble over at the 2012 Olympics. She's a hurdler, so that's pretty cool.
God. This is. I'm not sure if I can handle any more of this.
The best one was this guy isn't particularly well known at all, but he's called Aaron Farr, which is perfect. Yeah,
that's actually not true. That's
not
just made
not
up.
Professional. A young man. He did a tweet from 2018 when this kind of thread came up about best names in running. So I'm sure there are other ones out there. Obviously there are like people like Ricky Lightfoot, but I think Aaron Farr is my particular favourite. Or maybe Trip Hurt.
Oh my God.
This is the Runner's World podcast.
Right.
That
is really good. Come on, let's get into some useful stuff.
Let's get some useful stuff. So this is from the very useful magazine Runner's World, and we've often got Tom Craggs on before, and this time he talked about running and stress, and it's interesting. Obviously, there's an element of running and stress. We talk about like how running relieves stress, and that's true, and that's a great sort of reason enough for running. Probably increasingly my main reason for running. But he was looking more at like the stress balance, so the idea that like a little bit of stress from your running is good. That's how you adapt, but you also need to be careful in terms of stressing your body too much and looking at your life in a more holistic way when you start something like a marathon program.
Yeah. I mean, it's more about that sort of like the spectrum of life,
yes,
and the variety of stresses that come in from every different avenue.
Exactly.
Wherever in life you get your stress, work, family life, I don't know, maybe you're an online gambler, whatever it is that you do that's stressful. Yeah. All of those stresses obviously impact you physically and mentally as a whole.
Exactly.
And so it's the balance between the running stress, which is pretty much self-inflicted, and everything else that comes into play.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, that's what he talks about in terms of stress from training. He says that's the physical stress we create through our training decisions, through a balance of frequency, intensity, and volume, and how it builds over time. We can create a stress stimulus to help us build fitness. This needs to be considered at a macro level, the overall training load from our training plan over a long period, and the impact of changes in stress through a training cycle, for example, when building up to a specific race. And then, life stress, which is, as you say, a bit more holistic, looking at like stresses from a job, stresses from might be financial stress, all those sort of things. But it's very easy to ignore the kind of impact of psychological stress and how that impacts on physical health. But I think clever coaches like Tom build that into athletes' training programs. I think it's just worth something to consider if you're like, I want to run a great marathon. It's like, okay, but you're also working 12 hours a day and you've got these other stresses in your life. Is it actually a marathon that is that going to work in terms of stress, or actually do you need to pick a slightly smaller sort of exercise goal because the other stresses in your life are so big?
Yeah, I think that's often the case, is that the running is a high priority for most people. And if they're properly into it in some capacity, well, I mean, when I say properly into it, I mean you do it regularly because of a reason, then it's, its significance and its priority is very much crucial to life. And I think that if it's a de-stressor, or if it's just for your mental health, or if you are training for a race, all of these factors tie into its importance. And then it can become a stress when you can't do it as much as you want to because of all the other things in your life. So it becomes a sort of spiral of sort of the stress of not being able to go running is because of all the other stresses, and you kind of get twisted up in this sort of big whirlpool of stress because you can't go running to relieve the stress, and that makes you more stressed because of all the other stress. And there's some stress, and it's stressful. So it's very, very stressful. So it's quite good to sort of take a step back and have a look at, where all the outside influences of stress are, and also ones that can be eradicated, and things that are a time vacuum. You know what I mean? Like everyone gets, I don't know if everyone gets, but most people would probably get like an alert on their phone about their screen time, whatever it is. And you actually, you know, disturbingly have looked at your phone for 3.5 hours every single day or something like that. And how much stress that brings you, maybe subconsciously or consciously, because you're either on some sort of platform which is like Instagram or something where there's a sense of comparison, or you're scrolling through all this stuff that you don't really need to see. So there's all these extra stresses where it's kind of like it's quite nice to assess the stress and where it's all coming from. And I think that that's sort of part of what Tom gets at in terms of looking at the bigger picture, because you can get very dialed into just like, running is this thing and nothing else affects it. I've just got to do, if I do my miles and I do my training, then I'm all good. Whereas in fact, actually, the bad sleep you get, the long hours you work, they're all the extra stresses that actually have more of an impact on your running than perhaps even running does. So yeah, very, very, and the sort of bits and pieces that I really like was Tom talks about measuring the stress, and sort of kind of gauging actually what state you're in, which is quite, you'd sort of think was more difficult. You can sit down and self-assess, which is what most people would do. Oh, actually, I'm feeling pretty stressed out at the moment. I need to, not do this. Tech can help. Heart rate variability monitors, they're quite good for sort of looking at
Can you
variation.
explain the one? Yeah, because I hear the term and I'm like, I know broadly what it means, but I haven't used it. So,
okay, well, the heart rate variability is basically the measurement of a variation in time between each heartbeat. So obviously everyone knows, like, your heartbeat's like, my heartbeat is 90 beats per minute. But in between those beats, there are milliseconds of variation between each one. Now, your sort of heart rate variability, as in if your heart rate variability is very low, that tends to correlate with being stressed and strained, and your heart. So it ties in with other metrics, but essentially it's all to do with, like, the greater variability, the greater the time, then the more sort of like because heart rate variability is controlled by your autonomic nervous system, the ANS. So obviously if your nervous system is kind of stressed and out of sync, then your heart rate variability is affected. So it's quite a good metric of monitoring how the rest of the body, the system is, assessing your state of stress. So it's just generally the greater your heart rate variability, the better you are at recovering and more receptive you will be to further training stresses. Whereas if it's lower, then you're less prone to be able to cope with more stress. So that's quite a good, like, little tech thing that you can use to look at stress.
yeah, and I guess the other end of the scale, probably people like me would be like, oh, okay, that sounds quite technical. But Tom talks about using a self-scored stress questionnaire. So a simple self-scored questionnaire carried out on a weekly basis. You draw up a list of areas to score yourself on a scale from 0 to 10. For example, how well you felt you trained, how motivated you were, your levels of pain or discomfort, levels of work and family stress, quality of sleep, etc. And that can give you a kind of broad idea of, like, where the stress in your life is coming from and how much stress you've got overall. So I think that's actually quite a nice sort of manual way of looking at that. Yeah.
I would immediately say that's the first one to do. Like, we dive straight in with technology, but I think that doing that, because first of all you're actually writing down. There's something very cathartic and something genuinely sort of revealing than writing down all these sort of pent up stresses. It's like if you've got lots of stuff on your mind and you do a to-do list. After the to-do list, you feel better because it's kind of on paper and you can see what you need to do. Similarly, I think with just a self-scored stress questionnaire, how's everything going? What's the balance? You kind of get a bigger gauge of what's happening. I think that's absolutely the first step. The tech stuff is obviously a bit more of a buy-in. And again, you can spend lots of money on it if you wanted to. You could go and get blood tests, and you can go and have a look at cortisol, adrenaline, dopamine, all the other sort of chemicals in your system, which are associated with stress and what those levels are at. If you're feeling incredibly stressed, then that's one thing you can do. You could go and get a blood test, and but the stress questionnaire is absolutely the best place to start, I reckon.
And I think sort of linked to that would be getting a plan that looks at where those kind of peaks of stress are outside of your running, and trying to not put like a key race near there, or a massive long run on that particularly stressful week.
Yeah. For sure. Oh, but your sister's wedding's coming up, is it? Well, why don't you have a race the weekend after? No, don't do that. Yeah. That's mad. You're going to just end up, being exhausted and all those sorts of things. So, yeah, I mean, there's very sort of simple, straightforward things you can do to make the balance less stressful. But
yeah. And then it's classic stuff as well, isn't it? Like, and we kind of keep putting this message out there, but yeah, lots of easy running, right? Most people are going to benefit from a kind of 80-20 approach. That's kind of where most of the science is around kind of aerobic exercising. Like 80% of it's going to be relatively easy, and only 20% of it's going to be hard, and there being adequate recovery between hard workouts. So I think that's another way of stressing your system, is like too much hard running, too little recovery. Super easy to get into because you feel like you're getting some work done and you're kind of putting a proper shift in, but actually long term, is that a sustainable way to train? Probably not.
Yeah, I think that's true. I've definitely been for runs where I've actually tried to not almost sweat, if you know what I mean. Like if you have some sort of very, very easy levels, barometer, whatever you want to call it, of effort, so that if it's a heart rate zone, zone 1 it, just don't worry about it. Just really like one of those ones where if you want to run but you're feeling very, very stressed, you don't need to be putting your body, as in your muscles and your nervous system and the cardiovascular system, all of these things don't need to be put under duress, because physical duress will inevitably add to your emotional stress and all these sorts of things, because your body gets a big, obviously if you're chasing that endorphin-y, dopamine-y sort of high from running, of course that can help, but you're still putting your body under duress, which is fatigue and tiredness and all those sorts of things. So I would say that if you want to run but you're feeling stressful, then it's just as low key as you can go, basically, and that's where you're gonna probably get some cognitive mental stimulus, which is relaxing, but you're not adding any load to your body. You're not like putting it through any extra stress, which will just knock-on effect is that you'll 2 days later be even more tired than you were.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, mate. I think you're kind of stressing an already stressed system if you're kind of putting a massive shift in. One exactly. way I do this, I don't know about you, I guess a lot of people do this with shoes, don't they? So they think like, I'm going to put on my quick shoes, if you're lucky enough to have more than one pair. Yeah. And that's going to be an indicator to me that I'm going to go quickly. I know that in Kenya, where obviously you're going soon, one of the things they do is how they're dressed. So if you turn up for an easy run in Kenya, you're in like a full tracksuit. And then if you've got a vest on, it's like it's basically you're here to run quickly, basically. So it's almost like the way you dress is an indication of
mate, that's good to
what
know.
Your intentions for the run are. And I think that you can bring that to your own running. You could be like, right, I'm going to put on a long sleeve or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Like that's going to be me.
That's good to know. Thanks for telling me, mate, because I looked at the weather and it looks hot. I run hot, so I'm going to be out there in shorts and t-shirt, and everyone's going to be lining up for the easy runs in probably a full tracksuit, and everyone's going to go, this guy looks keen, and I'll be the slowest one there. So that's good to know. Perfect. I need to get a tracksuit.
So look, I think that probably brings us to the end of this week's episode. Thanks for bearing with us. Obviously, we had a couple of guest cancellations, but we have got Steve Magnus next week. He's coming on He's promised us he's coming on, so that could be something to look for. He's a well-renowned expert. So
Steve the Brain Magnus.
Things are looking up. Yeah,
things are looking up. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this episode where me and Rick panicked and waffled on about stress because we've been stressed. But subscribe to Runners World magazine. Go onto the internet, search Runners World UK subscriptions, and just get yourself the mag. That's a good idea. Also subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already, because that's the best thing you can do. Thank you so much for listening. You are all fantastic, and you'll hear from us very, very soon.